been a member of the 5 a.m. club for a long time, but I believe this is the first time I've ever recorded an intro sometime before the sun came up. I'm looking out my window. It doesn't look like it's up yet. So, there's a first for everything. And as The Rock would say, actually I don't know what The Rock would say, but he's probably already been up for hours doing stuff. Today's episode is filled with excitement. So much excitement that I could not wait to record the introduction. It's going to be awesome. We are delightfully joined by Catherine Orer, which I love saying and pronouncing difficult names. Orer. I probably butchered that, Catherine. I'm so sorry. I tried. That's what matters, right? Is trying. Trying is trying. Whatever. In today's episode, we have 4 main points that I think are absolutely a necessity in your careers. We'll start from the bottom, but no particular list. In no particular order. Selling is listening. I love that, right? I think oftentimes people want to talk over the person that they want to do business with instead of actually just listening to that person. If you're great at listening and you can deep dive on some of the things that those people talk about, it can be insanely valuable. First time you ever do something, that's the baseline. Don't try and do anything crazier than that. The first line is the baseline. Number 3, the insecurities of selling. And actually, something that I'm thinking about now is I think Catherine sold some ridiculous amount of artwork for some ridiculous amount of money. You need to hear how she did that as well. You guys can learn about Catherine at theartistentrepreneur.com. That's theartistentrepreneur.com. And finally, coaching on what you can't get on the old Google machine. Are you ready to get into this episode? I'm like staring at the microphone like, hello, how are you today? I'm ready. Are you? In 3, 2, 1, let's go.
You're listening to Zack Miller Says.
So there's a saying, and you probably get asked this a lot, and I hate asking questions that everyone asks, but I feel like it's important to ask. You know, there's the whole starving artist mindset where, you know, it's, and really there's starving entrepreneurs, there's starving everybody's. Like, what do you think when you hear about, you know, the whole starving, insert whatever career you do word?
What do I think? Well, I think many things. I think first it's a choice. I think there's so many things we control, so many things we don't control, but what we think is like the top thing we control. So already, if you think that your life is going to be one of a starving artist, then chances are that's what's going to happen, right? But I also understand that it's years and decades of stories that we've been hearing, that we've been telling ourselves, that our parents and grandparents have been, you know, just generation through generation sharing. And also, I think we're always looking for proof of that what we're thinking is the truth, right? So if you think that being an artist means starving, you're going to have that truth reflect everywhere. But when you start thinking, no, you can be a successful artist, make money, and be in integrity with your art, which is very important to me, right? Because a lot of people think you have 2 choices. Either you're in integrity with your art or you're commercial and you're a sellout, right? It's just, you need to choose. Again, I don't agree with that. If you look for proof of artists who are in integrity and make money, you're going to find it because it's everywhere.
Lots to go on from that. Okay, so that's perfect. But I think a lot of people think about that, right? It's what's driven into us year after year after year. And so many of our mindsets, so many of our thoughts, so many of the things that we think are true are because someone before us told us they're true and we haven't necessarily experienced that. And I think oftentimes it's even in like the world that, you know, that I was growing up in, it was like, you know, do well in high school, get good grades, go to college, work for a nice corporation, work up the corporate ladder, have a family, yada, yada, yada. Like, that is something that's driven into you the same way that you're talking about the starving artist mindset. And so it's like, if you don't experience that for yourself, you don't really get to figure out what you want to do. So for yourself, was that driven into you forever, that starving mindset concept?
Absolutely. Actually, that's what drove me to do what it is that I do today, which is business strategy for artists. When I was in college, my favorite class was art history, and I wanted to pursue my career in art history and to do, postgraduate studies in art history. And when I was accepted into the program, I went to see my favorite teacher, my art historian teacher, and I said, I got accepted in this postgraduate program. And he said to me, are you crazy? I'm not even a tenure yet. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I might have to go get a side job every year. I never know if I'm going to get a job. You have so much promise, Catherine. You could do whatever you want. Please don't go into the arts. Can you imagine? He was my mentor. He was the guy I looked up to. He was my favorite teacher. So what do you think I did? I switched programs and I went into PR and marketing. And and I started exactly what you said. I started working in the corporate sector, and I did that for 5 years while closing the door to my office, crying a little bit, then opening it up again and continuing to work, right? Because I really hated my job. But because someone I looked up to said to me, you're going to be struggling for money all your life. And I came from a family that struggled for money. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to get into the art history.
Interesting. So oftentimes professors are ones that, I'm going to generalize this statement, but are individuals who haven't necessarily lived that specific career. Was he someone who had been in that career before, or was he only on kind of the educational side of it?
I have no idea. I've lost touch with him. I was 18 at the time, but what I can tell you is that it caught up to me, right? After 5 years in the corporate world, I was like, oh, it's great. I have the dream job. Have the condo. I have the car. I'm traveling. I hate my life. I sold everything and I went to study art history, art market in Europe. And that gave me the opportunity to do work in the art market and then do what I do today. And I've never, ever 1 second regretted it. It's funny because people ask me, did you regret it? And I was like, how could I regret making that move? That's what I was meant to do for my life. So it was a much harder decision to do in mid-20s than it would have been to do it when I was 18. But in my mid-20s, I still didn't have kids, mortgage, like all these things. So I thought, let's just do it now before it becomes at a point where it's going to be even more difficult to make that decision.
I got out of media, TV news, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago. And every once in a while I see someone that I used to work with, which is weird because I don't necessarily like those days in my life, so I try to eliminate them and not see those people. And they're always like, do you regret not coming back? Do you want to come back? I'm like, it's been a decade. Like, do you think don't you think, like, if I wanted to do this again, I would do this? Like, no. Like, I have zero interest being in that scenario again. And so do you ever talk to that professor again and let him know that, or her?
No, I wish I did, but we've completely lost touch, and I don't think he's teaching now anymore. He's probably retired at this.
So he was wrong in your opinion, right?
I don't think that there's anyone who's wrong or right. I think he said to me what he thought was the best in that situation at that time. I remember his words so clearly. I'm going to speak to you as if you were my daughter. That's what he said to me when he started the conversation. I really think he wanted to help, right? And to be honest, not to sound too tacky, but I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And the background that I got doing my studies in PR and marketing, the structure that I learned working in corporate, makes me the person that I am today and makes me I think, much better equipped to serve the people that I serve. So the same way I don't regret leaving it, I don't regret that period in my life. I'm a person who doesn't really believe in regrets anyway. I don't think it's any good use of my time.
Mm-hmm. And I love that quote. Everything happens for a reason. I totally live by that too. And so it's interesting how he told you one thing, and then you go and you do something else for 5 or 6 years, I think you said.
Yeah.
And then you learn a new skill set that makes you better equipped for you going back to the thing that you wanted to do, which I think is so important. So how do you understand and dissect or analyze what someone's telling you, and then figuring out, is this something I should or should not act on? Because I think in a world now, especially in business, where people can watch the television show Shark Tank and think that they're now an entrepreneur and provide, you like that, and provide all this business guidance when they haven't done it themselves. And a lot of people are like these, status quo mentors out there, but they haven't actually acted on it themselves. How do you learn, or how do you understand what you should consume, what you should act on, when we're provided with so much information here in 2019 now?
Yeah. Meditation, is that a good answer? Well, first, I think in these times where there's so much content, what often I tell people who come to me is, I think we have enough content. Like, if I don't teach or coach or consult on things that you can Google, okay? Because pretty much everything you can Google these days. What you can't Google is context, right? It's really understanding the market you're operating in so that you can make the best decision based on, what it is that you know, and going even deeper to figuring out what it is that you don't know, right? And often artists think they can skip that part because it's the arts. They don't, what do you mean understanding my market? What do you mean, going out there and seeing who are the people who operate in my industry and connecting with these people? I create art. I don't need to do these things. I'm like, well, how's that been working for you?
That's interesting. I love that, though. Coaching on what you can't Google, the things that you can't Google is the context behind of it. And so I think a lot of people, I believe that content is really important, and it allows you to define credibility of one. And there's a lot of this is a piece of content in itself, the words that you're saying. All this stuff is content, right?
Yeah.
But what's bigger in that is really understanding that you're talking specifically to a very specific person, right? And if that person doesn't grasp it, it almost doesn't matter, because you're talking to a very specific person, right? And so someone the other day I met with, he said, I want you to, I'm starting a Facebook page for my business. And I said to him, don't just start a page to start a page. Like, you own something that most people probably aren't going to be searching for anyway, so it might be in your best interest to not even waste your time doing it. And so he sent me some of the videos that he produced, and look, they're not bad, but I'm like, I just don't see people really consuming what you're selling in a social media kind of way. And so it's probably in your best interest to just not do it and do something different. And so I think people think, I should just share, I should share to share. And it's just like, maybe you shouldn't, because in this world where more content is created today than, yesterday and all those days combined, like, it's overwhelming. And so it's hard to get in there. And so I love that piece of it. Do you meditate with an app?
Yes, actually. Well, sometimes I just use the timer on my phone, but I also use, what is it? I can find it for you here. It's Insight Timer, because I like the little ding.
Interesting. Very good. When did you get into meditation?
I would say a couple of years ago. I tried like a few years back, but I wasn't consistent. And I'm still not as consistent as I would like, but I just cheer myself on when I do it, because I know that it's going to make a huge difference in my day.
It's interesting. I've consumed a lot of books over the last 12 months or so, and some of the most successful people seem to meditate a lot. And it's interesting that might be the one common thing. Positive affirmations and meditation might be the two things that Most,
Do
it seems like most successful people do.
do you meditate, Zach?
So after reading a couple of these books, I was like, this is interesting. I should try this, right? I'm like, I'm going to be like, like whatever. First of all, I tried it probably back in June, July. I'd read a couple of books that were directly on meditation, and I'm always like, let's explore something, let's see it. So I downloaded some apps, didn't like it. Then in November, I went to an event, and one of the guys that had invested in the Calm.com app was like, I was an investor in this, whatever, yada yada. And I was like, okay, well, I already have that app. Let me try it out. And so since that day, I've actually gone straight every day, 77 straight days.
Wow.
So it's interesting, yeah. So like I've created this habit where it's usually one of the first three things that I do in a day. And it's interesting. Half the time I think I'm sleeping, which is a totally different story because I do it first thing. But it's definitely interesting. Like the first few times when I realize that I'm acting on it during the day, where it's like, something along the lines of like, everything will be okay. Like, you just be calm, take a deep breath, whatever. I think that's really what it's for. It's right. Like, put your mind in the right setting. So then when this thing comes up and it sucks or it's good, you can recognize that and just kind of push through.
Exactly. What it's taught me a lot is I had realized that I worried a lot. I used to worry a lot. And that really changed my perspective on worrying. Like, I was having a conversation with a client this morning, and it was like, when is it in our lives that we had a situation and we're worrying and we're like, oh man, if I stress just a little, if I worry just a little more, this problem is just going to solve itself, right? Like, that never happens. And the minute you realize that and you stop worrying, it creates so much mental space, so much space in your life for other things, like actual cool things that you want to create and develop.
It's amazing how many people that I have some sort of relationship with or have a conversation with, and they worry like nonstop. And I'm a very patient person. I'm a very long game person. And it's just very interesting how even before meditation, I'm not claiming that, over these 77 days, it's made me this amazing person. But I'm a very patient person. And I think that's so important to where I've been able to get in life, because I'm just like, look, things will be okay, right? Like, yes, this situation sucks, but bad things happen to everyone, right? And so if you can kind of be an even keel person your entire life, like, good things can happen from it. So do you still worry like crazy, or what have you done?
No, that's the thing. Like, I was telling my husband the other day, and I said, I think my biggest win of 2018 that I stopped worrying. Like, I just don't worry anymore. And like, people will listen and say, well, of course she's not worrying. She's got her business. It's doing great. She's got her shit together. I mean, I'm like everybody else. I was in the emergency room 2 nights ago with my daughter, my 5-year-old, and it was scary shit. But still, I mean, what's the point? Like, I'm surrounded by professionals. She's going to be taken care of. I'm here to support her. I don't think she needs to see me worrying and stressing out. She needs to see me that I got this for her. Right? So in every aspect of your life, if you're calm and centered, you're going to be able to make the right decisions and do the right move.
And I think something else that's so important is not worrying what others think, or how, like you just said, like all these people are like, oh, you must be successful, whatever. It's like, I really could give two shits like what you think about me in that kind of case, because that's what makes you start worrying. And so eliminating those people's thoughts in yours, like there are absolutely people in my life that I care I care what they think about me, but the overwhelming majority of people, I don't care. This thing like makes it really bad for people, because they're like, oh, instant gratification, that person has to like my post on Instagram, and then if they don't, then they must hate me. It's like, no, they just didn't see it. Don't be a donkey. Like, but we worry so much about that. And in the artist world, like, are you seeing that instant gratification is something that a lot of people are suffering from and not really thinking in kind of a, because if you think about it, instant gratification is really a short-term mindset. And it seems like you have this really long-term mindset like I do. Like, are you seeing and consulting with a lot of your clients like, hey, like, think about this for the long time?
Yes, a lot. Okay, so two things. First, yes, like they've waited so long they come to me and they're like, now I need money now, right? And by the way, I have no money to invest in my business. So I'm like, okay, this is not going to help you. This is not a context to build the business that you want, because you're just going to shortchange yourself. You're just going to do the things that are going to give you a quick ROI, but it's not going to build your business. It's just going to put a Band-Aid on it, right? And I missed the other thing. Oh yeah, you were saying instant gratification. There are some artists, it's instant gratification about like, will people like what it is that I create, right? But most of the artists I know, of course, there's always that insecurity, but you live with that insecurity because it's part of the creative process. Usually it's part of what drives you. And yes, you're always insecure of how it's going to show up in the world, but it's part of the process. A lot of the insecurities come from the selling part, right? People will think I'm too salesy, I'm too pushy. What if I post this a second time? What will people think? I'm gonna annoy them, right? Just to give that social media example. Or I posted this painting, I said it was for sale. Now I look stupid because nobody bought it. What do I do now? Right?
And no one's buying on the first date anyway. Like, right. So like, yeah, I try to tell people, I'm like, okay, like you posted something on social media, 10% of the people only seeing it anyway. No one buys on the first time that you send it to them, right? Like I use the example of, and I don't use a lot of my personal life, but like I'll use the example of, it took me 3 months to get my wife to go on my first date with her, right? And that there's like hundreds of messages in there. And so like, if I'm not persistent enough, like that's something that's not sold enough in like, I think business is like being resilient, being tenacious, persistent, like pushing through. And it's like people like you have to do that to make that sale. There's a reason why you see an Apple commercial every 2 seconds, because they realize one of those times someone will buy from them.
It works, right? And the other thing is like, okay, let's just say, which I've never seen yet, and I've met hundreds of artists, probably thousands. Let's just say you're overdoing it and you lose followers because of it. So what? I mean, who cares? They weren't going to buy from you anyway.
Right.
So they're just, it's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. You're learning that maybe it's probably not the quantity of the post. It's probably the quality of it. It's maybe the way you're engaging with people. We know, right, Zach, that people will buy after 7 to 9 touch points in any industry, arts included. So obviously, if you just do a post, and by the way, when Apple or any retailer or any brand has something to say, they don't just say, hey, I got this for sale, want to buy it? That's not how they do it. They tell a story, they're engaging, they have so many different ways of selling without us feeling that we're being sold to, right? And by the way, I love being sold to. Like, I appreciate it. Someone who does a good pitch, even if I'm not buying, I'll congratulate them on their great pitch.
I always tell people that. Tell them, like, I appreciate your hustle. I'm not interested. Right? I appreciate you knocking on my door. I'm not going to buy from you. I always say, I appreciate the hustle, but get off my lawn. I'm out.
Yeah,
Right? No, but I mean,
exactly.
It's hard, but it's figuring out where a trend might be, basically, right? And if you can figure out that, if I knock on 10 doors, this might work. But people don't want to hear it takes seven touch points to get them. So when you're talking to an artist who's already terrified and insecure to do it once, how do you get them to do it 7 times to maybe get one sale?
It depends on the person. What do I do? Well, usually I just say, let's just try this once. Let's just try this once, and let's take the fear of failure out of the way. Because, at the beginning you were saying, Zach, that we have this structure that we grow up, we should be doing this, we should be doing that after do the corporate and keep the job. The other thing we're being taught is we shouldn't fail, ever. We're not allowed, right? Because you do an exam and you fail, you have your teachers on your back, your parents up your back, you can't go out anymore, you're grounded, you're not allowed to fail. But really, when you have a business, you need to get yourself some slack. You're going to fail and you're going to fail more than once. So let's take failing out of the equation as if it's a bad thing. Let's just test it and learn from that experience and document it. That's often also what I tell them is like, just do the first one just to document it, just as a baseline and see what worked, what didn't, so we can learn from it next time. Because you're not going to get it perfect from the first time. I've been doing this many years and I still have flops and I still have things that like just pick up and I didn't expect it. Because the landscape changes so quickly too.
Okay, no, still more to go with. Okay, so that's really good. So is the word failure, in your opinion, the wrong word? It's just been glorified? Because to me, failure is like really hitting an all-time low. Getting someone to tell you no, is that really a failure? Or is it really just a learning experience in the process, right? And so everyone uses that word failure. I use it, and oftentimes I don't want to use it, but it's the word that comes out. You just used it. And so usually when I hear it, I try and be like, do people really fail, right? Like, did this thing really fail? Or did you just learn from it, right? And so do you use that kind of language to then be like, look.
Absolutely. It's not a failure. Like, it's only a failure if you think it is. I mean, everybody forgot tomorrow.
Right.
Like, people are like, oh, I posted this, I didn't sell it, I'm going to look so stupid now, what am I going to do? I still have this painting, I didn't sell it, I'm going to post it again and people are going to know that I failed to sell it. I'm like, you really think that people remember that?
No.
You really think that people are just waiting on Instagram to see you, that you didn't sell that piece? Really, to be honest, people don't care.
Right.
And it's your job to make them care. Right? They're not going to come to you and say, hey, buddy, like, I saw this. No, it's your job to be on top of things. And I don't think it's failing. I was teaching in college a creative entrepreneurship class, and one of the acronyms, they were saying that no just means next opportunity, right? So, I mean, for me, no, it's definitely being told no, screwing up a sale. It's not the end of the world. Failing is, I think, the only thing that's failing is just not doing it. Failing to take action. Failing to just show up.
It's funny that you just said that. So I am emceeing an event actually tomorrow, and all of the speakers, I went and had like phone calls with them just so I can introduce them better and understand them. And one of the guys, he said something on the lines of the line that you just said, and I was looking for the notes. Failure is just not trying, right? And so it's like if you're not trying, then that's failure. But everything else is really not a failure in there, and so I think that's great. Another thing that I think is really good that you just said is the first time that you ever do something is really a baseline or a document of that. So I'm training for a half an Ironman, and my goal is to just finish. Right? And then probably never do it again, hopefully, right? But like I did a half a marathon a few years ago. There was no number goal. It was just get it finished, right? Get that first sale, do that first piece of art, get that first thing out, learn from that, figure out the process, and then improve upon that. Because if you don't do it the first time and just get it out there, you don't have a baseline. You don't have a document to run by. And I think that's incredible. How was that received with your customers?
It depends. It depends because a lot of people it depends when they reach out to me, right? And they've tried over and over and over again. But that's the thing, right? Once you have your baseline, then you need to kind of study it, evaluate it, look at the data and change something. You can't just like redo the same thing over and over again and expect that it's just going to magically appear differently. So no, usually they're pretty open-minded about it. I mean, when they reach out to me is because they want to do something differently. And I mean, when they start seeing the results of doing it, then they're just like, man. And the best thing is like when I get people or my clients who email me back after we've worked together and they're like, okay, so you know the strategy we talked about, I did it. And now I know that I have a 20% return. And then they start calculating and having fun. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing, because a lot of people think artists, like they're not wired to do these things. But again, it's just a story we're telling ourselves, because artists are super creative they can be creative in business too if they allow themselves. They don't think they need to fit into this mold of what being a business person should be. And they just allow themselves to use that creativity to fuel their business side. It's going to work for them too.
Love that. I think it's so important, and it's a great moment when your clients, the people that you're mentoring, coaching, whatever, start to grasp it or start to get they're rewarding the benefits, and I think that's powerful. Are you a big Wonder Woman fan?
Yes, I am very much. I have the figurine too, but I think my daughter stole it from me. But yes.
Very cool. What type of art are you into?
I'm not personally an artist. Probably that's why I love working with artists so much, because I've worked with artists for so many years. I know how hard it is to put your heart and soul on the table, and just like often people don't realize how hard it is to just do it, to just show up for your canvas or for your camera or whatever it is medium that you use. I love photography. I collect abstract art.
Do you get a lot of pushback that you don't have a lot of experience in art from your customers? Like, hey, like you don't know art?
Well, actually, that's what the artists who work with me love the most, because I have art market background. I've sold $85,000 artwork over the phone. I've worked in art galleries. I've sold at art fairs. I don't want to say anything, but I'm just going to say it. I'm not an artist who sold a few pieces and now showing other artists how to sell, right? Because some artists come to me and like, well, if they're selling so well, why do they need to show me how to sell? Why aren't they just creating more and selling more? So my background is the business of art. I've, studied at Christie's. I've worked in art galleries. I've done the contemporary art fairs. I know how the market works. I know how to price art. I know how to sell it. So I don't get pushback at all. I actually get like, where have you been?
I love that. So you sold $85K over the phone.
Yeah.
Walk me through that scenario.
Well, I mean, the artwork was from an artist that had already a good reputation. People were waiting for, it was secondary market. They were waiting for that show to happen. And, I'm based in Montreal. The buyer was based in another province. Canada's pretty big, right? So he called the first call, and we started chatting. And he asked me like, what did we have? And I started asking him about his collection. Selling is a lot more about listening than talking, right? So understanding what he was looking for. And pretty quickly, I realized that money wasn't the issue. Like, he had a collection. He wanted to add one of these pieces. So, just being in integrity with, choosing a few pieces that I thought were the right fit for him. And we had a few conversations over the phone. It didn't happen in 10 minutes. It happened over a few days. But, the best part was when he got his crate and he opened it and he called me and he said, "This is terrific. It's even better than I thought." And that's really the biggest reward, when you make that fit between an artwork and a collector.
Love it. You used to work in PR, so you have a good public relations background. You understand kind of how to get attention. How does someone like you now find customers? Or if someone's coming to you and saying, hey, like, how are you going to get my artwork to be seen? What are some of the top tips that you would provide them?
Well, you had two questions there. How I get seen or how artists get seen? You want to know?
Trick question. I want to know both.
How do I get seen? Well, I do interviews like this one. Right now, I'm pretty lucky to say that I have a good also word of mouth kind of relationship that's happened. I work a lot with referrals. So either artists who've worked with me in the past, who come back eventually, work again, or send me new clients. But I don't know, people Google me. I have a lot of content on my website that people can consume, and then when they're ready, move on to the next level and work with me either in group capacity or privately. So I've had a Facebook group, the Artist Entrepreneur Network, where artists come in and share their journey, and we sometimes have conversations there. So it's really a mix of online marketing and offline marketing as well. I do speaking gigs, things like that. So it's really connecting with artists where they are, right? So that's pretty much, and Instagram obviously for artists is a great place to meet artists. So I've been really leveraging Instagram over the last year and a half. Now my clients, my artists, how do I get them to sell art? It's really having really deep conversations about what it is that they want in terms of business model, because there's as many business models as there are artists out there. And often they come to me hoping that I will tell them what to do, which something I did very early on in my business, like, okay, let me tell you what you're going to do. And you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and it's all going to work out for you. It turns out it didn't, because it didn't come from them. So resistance and procrastination was showing up in ways I was like, oh, what is this? Oh, it's a little thing called resistance. So now my approach is much more understanding what is your vision, and then developing a business model that's adapted to their vision and the niche and client base that they want to develop.
What's something that we haven't talked about that is hot on your mind, or something that you like to talk a lot about?
Resistance.
Okay, so when with resistance,
yeah.
When someone do you decide that that's not the right client for you? Do you find there's a way to maneuver that so that you can get them to do what you kind of want them to do? How do you work with that?
I think the first thing is recognizing it that there's resistance. So maybe people are listening and they don't really know what we're talking about when we're talking about resistance, but it's really when you end up not doing what you know exactly what you should be doing to either grow your business, have better relationships, whatever it is. A lot of the resistance comes from building connections, building relationships. And if you don't have connections and relationships, you're not going to have a very solid business, in my opinion. What's made my business successful is that people come to me, and I'm much more about meeting people. Let's get on a call. Let's see if I'm a good fit for you. Let's get to know each other, and let's if I'm the right fit for you. Like, do you really want to work with me or not? And never feeling that I'm going to pressure them into anything. So I have solid relationships. And sometimes someone said to me, you know what, it's not a right fit for me, but let me send you somebody else, right? And these things have happened to me so many times. So resistance is really when you're not ready to make that, you need to do something, like go out there and meet that collector or meet with that gallery or show up with your art, and you're not doing it. First step is to acknowledge that it's happening, and then understand what are the root causes of it and what we can do to kind of move beyond it and actually get you the results that you want. Because and excuses. Another syndrome of resistance is excuses. If there's always shit happening in your life that's keeping you from doing what it is that you really want to do, it's not everybody else's fault. Okay? You need to have a good look at your own situation.
What?
Yes.
It's everybody else's fault. Come on. I think that's it's so true about the whole relationship side of it too, right? So when I'm working with a client that is more of a long-term one-on-one client, it's usually a 12-month process with them, and it usually takes several conversations before I even bring up a conversation of, here's what I can offer you, because if they're going to pay me the amount of money that I want, and I have to work with them for a 12-month period, I have to be giving them my A game basically for 365 days. And if I already despise them on day 3, where am I going to be on day 6 at that point, right? And so, or day 365. And so people don't get that. It's like, look, sometimes you have to give a little bit of you to figure out if this is going to be the right fit for that super customer, if you will. And so I totally appreciate that. I'm working on a talk we were talking beforehand about podcasts and how you go on. You're doing kind of a podcast tour, and I am working on a talk to submit to a group that is all about podcasts. And my synopsis is basically stop trying to get all these views and downloads and have those be the metrics. Instead, the metric should be, in my opinion, like net new relationships that you can create, whether that be with the guests that you have or with the listeners that you have, because ultimately it doesn't matter if you have 1 million downloads but you have no relationships. Like, that's not a good game for me, and I think for you too. And so I think it's so important to try to build those relationships, and you end up building a better life out of it, right? And so
Exactly.
I try and take all my guests, some of them I do better than others, I guess, but I try and make new friends with them. And I think that's important. And it's not just a one-time, like, hey, it was nice talking to you, Catherine, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like, check in every once in a while. Like, figure out what's really true in their lives and what they love to do, and talk about those things. Don't just talk about business. Not everyone wants to talk about business all the time, right? And so
Yep.
learning those real key features to their life can be so powerful.
Yeah, and artists will tell me, yeah, but that doesn't apply to me, Catherine. I don't sell a service. And I'm like, no, it applies even more to you, because what do you rather? Prospect and get 10 clients who are going to each buy you one piece of art, or build that relationship? It's called that's why you call them collectors, not buyers. One person who's going to buy from me year after year after year, who's going to wait in line to be the first at your opening because they don't want to miss and see, like, how come this one sold? I wanted it, right? That's what you want, because that's when you start knowing and you can start predicting sales, because you have that client base, and you know that when you show up with a new series, a new show, whatever it is that you're working on, you have these people that are waiting for it, and they're going to buy from you. Not everyone has more than one wall. I know collectors who don't have wall space, and they just hang wall in their, like, wardrobe or whatever, because they're so committed to supporting the artists that are around their lives.
It's a binger, if you will, right? So these people who will go and watch Stranger Things on Netflix, and they'll watch it for a weekend, and that's all they do, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same effect. It might be a TV show on Netflix, but it's the same thing as the art that is in a collection, right? And so you're trying to find those super consumers that are willing to buy everything that you do, and you're not going to get that by not creating a real relationship with that person.
No, exactly. And I've had artists get shit from clients because they were like, how come, like, I've been buying from you and now you have something new and you don't even reach out to me and you're selling it to somebody else? How come I don't get first dibs? And then the artist like, well, I didn't want to bother you. You already have pieces. I didn't think you would. What do you mean you didn't think? Why are you trying to think the place of your client? If he doesn't want it, trust me, he's just going to tell you. And it's okay if he doesn't want it. But it's okay to put your loyal customers, collectors first, and show them the respect and and show them that they have value in your life.